The alien girl sat on the edge of the playground. The ground was dry and dusty, the sun sharp over the broken colony. Children played ball in the wide-open square, their laughter and shouts rising into the air like music. She watched them with large, quiet eyes, her hands curled into fists against her side. She wanted to run with them, to kick the ball, to laugh, to fall and rise again. But she could not. Where her right leg should have been, there was only empty space. The limb had been lost during the war. No one told her why or how. She only knew she woke one day with pain. Now, while the others jumped and moved with light steps, she sat still like a stone. She could only watch the game. The children sometimes looked at her, their whispers sharp and cruel. "Why does she sit there every day?" one said. "She can't play. She is broken," another answered. She lowered her head so they could not see her eyes. She hated that word, broken, but she had no way to answer them. Behind the fence stood the human soldiers, tall and strange in their armor. They were stationed here after the war to keep peace. The aliens feared them, but they also depended on them. Among those soldiers was a man named Daniel. He was not like the others. He watched more than he spoke. And on this day, his eyes followed the lonely girl at the edge of the playground. Daniel had seen many children in colonies like this. He knew the look of hunger, of loss, of fear. But the look in this girl's eyes was different. It was not only sadness. It was longing, deep and burning. She wanted something, but she had already decided she could never have it. That was why she did not move, did not speak, did not cry. She only watched. Daniel leaned on the fence, his helmet resting on his arm. The ball bounced again, rolling close to the girl's feet. The children chased after it, but when they saw where it had gone, they stopped. They did not ask her to pass it. They only turned away and pulled the ball back to their circle. The girl sat still, pretending not to notice, but her lips trembled. Daniel felt a weight inside his chest. He could walk away. It was not his problem. He was only here to guard the colony. But something about her silence called to him. He thought of his own sister back on Earth, who had once broken her leg. She had cried because she could not run in the park. But she had healed. This alien child would never heal, unless someone helped her. The other soldiers called for him, telling him to move along. But Daniel stayed. He waited until the children went home, until the sun began to fall behind the old colony walls. The girl was still there, her eyes on the empty playground. Slowly, Daniel stepped through the gate, his boots heavy on the dust. The girl stiffened, ready to run. But she could not run far, not with one leg. Daniel stopped a few steps away, lowering himself to her height. "What is your name?" he asked softly. The girl did not answer, her eyes wide and afraid. Daniel smiled gently, placing his helmet on the ground. "I saw you watching the game," he said. "You want to play, don't you?" She looked at the ground, her small hands tightening. Daniel followed her gaze to the place where her leg was missing. He understood without words. She shook her head, as if to say no. But Daniel knew the truth. It was not that she did not want to play. It was that she believed she never could. Daniel sat there in silence for a long moment, the wind passing over them both. The girl's eyes lifted once, meeting his, before she turned away again. That look was enough. It told him everything. And it planted a thought inside his mind, one he could not push away. That night, as he walked back to the soldiers' quarters, Daniel's steps were heavy. The image of the girl sitting alone would not leave him. He told himself he was foolish, that he could do nothing. But deep down, he already knew. He would try. The next morning, the colony square was full of noise again. Children kicked the ball, dust rising under their feet, their voices sharp with joy. The alien girl sat at the edge like before, her face empty, but her eyes alive with secret fire. She hugged her thin arms around her body, as if to protect herself. Every cheer from the children was like a knife, reminding her that she could never join them. From the gate, Daniel stood watching. The soldier's armor caught the light of the twin suns, but his eyes were fixed on her small form. He had not slept well the night before. Her face had followed him in dreams. He had thought about her silence, her missing leg, and the way she had stared at the ball as if it carried her whole life inside it. Most soldiers did not care about colony children. They were too busy with patrols and orders. But Daniel could not turn away, not this time. He pushed the gate open and stepped inside the square. The children slowed, their game faltering, their voices sinking to whispers. They stared at the human soldier, nervous, curious, some afraid. But Daniel did not look at them. He walked slowly toward the girl who sat alone. His boots pressed deep prints into the dust, each step heavy with purpose. The girl saw him and froze, her thin shoulders stiff, her one leg pulling close to her body, as if she could make herself smaller. Her wide eyes shone with both fear and pride. She did not want pity, she had received enough of that. But she also did not know how to face this human who dared to come closer. Daniel stopped a few steps away, not wanting to scare her. He bent down so he would not tower over her. His helmet hung from his arm, his face uncovered so she could see he was only a man, not just a soldier in steel. "Hello," he said softly, his voice low and steady. The girl did not reply, her lips pressed into a hard line. Daniel tilted his head, trying again. "Do you like the game?" Her eyes flicked toward the ball for a second, then back to the ground. Her silence spoke louder than words. Daniel studied her carefully. He could see her thin frame, the scars that ran across her skin, the way her hands twitched as if they wanted to reach for something but stopped. He knew then that she wanted more than anything to be part of the children's circle, but the missing leg was a wall she could not cross. He thought of his tools back in the barracks, of the scrap piles near the colony gates. An idea began to spark inside his mind, faint but growing. Still, he did not want to rush her. He tried a question instead. "What is your name?" he asked. The girl looked up at him for a heartbeat, then shook her head, refusing. Daniel smiled gently, not offended. "That's all right," he said. "You don't have to tell me, not yet." He leaned back on his heels, looking at the ball that rolled across the square. The children had stopped playing altogether. Now they only watched from a distance, whispering about the strange sight. A human soldier talking to a broken alien girl. It was something none of them had seen before. "You want to play, don't you?" Daniel asked, his voice low so only she could hear. The girl's eyes filled with sudden fire, sharp and quick, then dimmed again as she shook her head. Her fingers gripped the dust, her throat tight with words she would not speak. Daniel followed her gaze to the empty place where her leg should have been. He understood. It was not that she did not want the game. It was that she had accepted a life without it. For a long moment the silence stretched between them. The other children shifted, restless, unsure what was happening. The wind carried voices from the market, the cries of merchants and the clatter of tools. But inside that circle of dust and shadow it was only Daniel and the girl, two beings from different worlds bound by the same heavy silence. Finally Daniel rose slowly to his feet. "I'll see you again," he said simply. The girl blinked, startled by his promise. She did not move as he walked back to the gate, his steps slow and steady. But when he reached the fence, he turned and saw her still watching him, her eyes wide with questions she could not ask. That night Daniel went to the scrap yard on the edge of the colony. Rusting machines lay broken under the dim light of the moons. Old parts, half-burned engines, shattered frames, useless to most, but not useless to him. He knelt in the dust, pulling wires and metal plates together, his mind racing. He remembered his training in engineering, the pieces he had worked on in the army. If he could build weapons from broken steel, maybe he could build something else, something better. The workers laughed when they saw him digging in the piles. "A human soldier playing with trash," one said. "He must have lost his mind," another added. Daniel ignored them, his hands steady as he chose each piece. In his head, he could already see the shape forming. Not a weapon, not a machine of war, but a leg. The workshop in the barracks was dim and full of echoes. Most soldiers used it only to repair weapons or armor, not for anything else. But Daniel sat at a corner table, spreading out wires, bolts, and old plates of metal. The lamps above flickered, shadows moving over his tired face. He had worked all night, and still the pieces in front of him did not yet look like a leg. He tightened a screw and cursed under his breath. The pieces slipped, clattering to the floor. The others laughed when they saw him bent over junk. "You're wasting time, soldier," one said. "These scraps won't save anyone." Daniel did not look up, his hands busy. His mind was sharper than their words. He knew this was not about saving everyone. It was about saving one. In his memory, he saw the girl sitting alone, her eyes dark and silent. He saw her fingers pressing into the dust, her lips tight with words she never spoke. And he remembered the small spark of fire when he asked if she wanted to play. That tiny flame pushed him forward. Even when his tools slipped, even when the soldiers mocked him, he kept going. He took parts from old exosuits, broken stabilizers, and torn belts. He shaped them into joints, hammered them into frames. Slowly, piece by piece, the shape began to form. Not smooth, not perfect, but strong. Something that could carry weight. Something that could move. The first time he tested it, the leg collapsed under pressure. The second time, the joint froze, refusing to bend. Daniel wiped sweat from his brow, his eyes burning with fatigue. But he refused to stop. He pulled another set of screws, adjusted the weight, replaced the rods with lighter alloys. The hours dragged like years, but his hands stayed steady. At last the frame held firm. He pressed the joint and it bent with a clean, sharp motion. A sound of possibility. Daniel sat back, staring at the half-finished leg. It was ugly, made of mismatched metal and wires. But in his eyes it was beautiful, because it was hope. Hope for a child who had none. The next day, he carried the frame wrapped in cloth. The children were back in the square, their voices rising like before. The girl sat at the edge, the same place, her arms hugging her chest. Her eyes followed the ball, her lips trembling with silent longing. Daniel stepped close, his shadow falling across her. She looked up, startled, her body stiff. He knelt, placing the cloth on the ground between them. "I made something," he said, his voice gentle. The girl tilted her head, wary. Daniel unwrapped the cloth, revealing the rough, shining shape of the leg. The children stopped playing, their eyes wide, whispers running through their group. The girl froze, her breath caught. Her hands hovered above the strange gift, afraid to touch it. Her eyes shone with disbelief. "It's for you," Daniel said. She shook her head quickly, her fear rising. She pushed the cloth back toward him as if it were fire. Her one leg scraped the dust as she tried to move away. Daniel raised his hands slowly, not to scare her. "It won't hurt," he whispered. "Not if you let me help you." For a long moment she said nothing, her chest rising and falling. Her eyes shifted from the leg to his face, back and forth. She wanted it, but she was terrified. The children gathered closer, their whispers sharp. "She can't use it," one said. "She will fall," another added. The girl's hands shook, torn between hope and fear. Daniel leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You don't have to decide now," he said. "But this can give you a chance, one chance to stand, one chance to try." Her breath caught, her eyes filling with tears she would not let fall. She reached out with trembling fingers, brushing the cold metal. The touch made her shiver. But she did not pull away. Daniel's heart lifted at that small gesture. She had not accepted, not yet, but she had touched it. And that was the first step. As the sun set behind the colony walls, Daniel wrapped the leg again. "I will come back tomorrow," he promised, his voice steady. The girl said nothing, but her eyes followed him as he walked away. She held the memory of the cold metal in her fingers. And for the first time since the war, she allowed herself to imagine. She imagined standing. She imagined stepping onto the dust without falling. She imagined running toward the ball. The thought was terrifying, but it was also powerful. It was a glimpse of hope. The suns rose again over the colony, painting the walls with pale gold light. Children rushed into the square as always, chasing the ball, their voices rising like birds in the sky. At the edge of the dust, the alien girl sat in her usual place, her thin frame still, her eyes locked on the game. But this time, something was different. Her fingers brushed her knee again and again, remembering the touch of cold metal from yesterday. She could still feel it on her skin. And though her fear was heavy, hope whispered inside her heart. Daniel walked through the gate carrying the cloth bundle. His steps were slow, careful. The children noticed him at once, their game pausing as whispers spread. The girl's eyes widened when she saw him, her chest tightening. She almost wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. Her body trembled with both dread and secret longing. Daniel knelt before her like before, placing the bundle gently on the ground. He unwrapped it slowly, letting the sunlight strike the rough but shining frame of the leg. The girl's breath caught, her hands pulling close to her chest. Her wide eyes flicked between the gift and his face. The other children crowded closer, their whispers sharp. "She cannot do it," one muttered. "She will fall," another said. Their words struck like stones, but Daniel did not let them reach her. "Do you trust me?" he asked softly. The girl shook her head quickly, her fear clear. Daniel smiled gently. "That's all right. You don't have to trust me yet. Just try to trust yourself." He lifted the frame, showing how the joint bent, how the straps tightened. His voice calm, his movements steady. "This is not perfect," he admitted. "But it can hold you, it can help you stand." The girl stared at it as if it were magic. Her heart pounded, her throat dry. She wanted it, but the terror of falling, of pain, of being laughed at, was heavy like a chain. Daniel saw her shaking, saw the battle in her eyes. He reached out his hand, not to force, only to offer. "You do not have to be alone anymore," he whispered. Her lips trembled, her fingers curled. Finally, with a breath that seemed to tear out of her chest, she nodded. Her hand reached toward him, trembling like a leaf. Daniel's heart leapt, but he kept his face calm. He placed the frame beside her and began to adjust the straps. Every movement slow, careful, so she would not feel trapped. The children pressed closer, their whispers falling into silence as they watched. When Daniel lifted the frame to her leg, the girl gasped. The cold metal against her skin made her flinch, but she did not pull away. Daniel tightened the straps, checking the balance, adjusting the bolts. His hands were steady, his voice quiet. "Almost there," he said, "almost ready." When he finished, he leaned back, giving her space. The girl sat frozen, staring at the strange weight attached to her. Her breath came fast, her chest rising and falling. Daniel did not push. He waited, patient as stone. Finally, she pressed her hands to the ground and tried to lift herself. The joint bent, the frame shuddered, her body swayed. For a moment it seemed she would fall. The children gasped, some laughing in cruel whispers. But Daniel stepped forward, steadying her with a gentle grip on her arm. "You are not falling," he said firmly. "You are standing." The girl's eyes widened as she realized the truth. Her body was upright, both feet, one flesh, one metal, pressed into the dust. Her heart raced, her breath caught in her throat. She was not sitting anymore. She was standing. The square was silent, the children staring. The girl's hands trembled, her eyes shining with something she had never felt before. Daniel smiled, his voice low and calm. "Take a step," he said. She shook her head, terrified. "Take one," he repeated, his tone gentle but firm. "Just one." The girl swallowed hard, her gaze fixed on the ground. She shifted her weight, the metal joint creaking softly. Then, with a trembling push, she moved forward. The dust lifted under her new step. Her body swayed, nearly falling, but Daniel's hand steadied her. Gasps filled the square, the whispers rising again. She moved, one child said. "She can walk," another breathed. The girl's chest heaved, her lips parting in shock. Her eyes filled with tears she could no longer hold. For the first time since she lost her leg, she was not crawling, not sitting. She was walking. Daniel steadied her again, his voice proud but calm. "You see," he whispered, "you are stronger than you think." The children stared, some in awe, some in disbelief. The girl looked at them, her face wet with tears. She had taken one step, just one, but to her, it felt like crossing the universe. As the suns dipped lower, casting long shadows across the square, the girl stood taller, her hands shaking but her eyes bright. She glanced at Daniel, and for the first time, her lips curved into the smallest, shyest smile. And in that moment, everyone watching knew. The game was about to change. The colony square had never been so silent. The children who once laughed and shouted now stood frozen, their ball lying forgotten in the dust. All eyes were fixed on the alien girl who stood on two legs, one her own, one built from scraps and steel. Her chest rose and fell as if every breath was a battle, her small hands clenched tight. The metal frame gleamed in the fading sun, unsteady but real. She had taken a step, and the world had changed. Daniel stood beside her, steady and calm, his hand ready if she stumbled. But he did not carry her weight. He let her balance herself. The girl swayed, her body trembling, but she did not fall. Her eyes lifted from the ground, meeting the circle of children. For the first time, she was not watching from the edge. She was standing among them. The whispers began again, sharp and nervous. "She's walking," one child gasped. "It's not real," another muttered. "She will fall any moment." But none of them moved forward. They stared as if seeing her for the first time. Not the broken girl, not the one-legged shadow on the sidelines, but someone who had risen. Daniel leaned down, his voice low. "Do you want to try again?" he asked. The girl swallowed hard, her throat dry. Her eyes flicked toward the ball lying in the dust. She hesitated, fear gripping her chest. But then she nodded, a small and fragile motion. Daniel smiled. Good, then go to it. She shifted her weight carefully, her arms out to balance. The metal joint creaked, the straps pulled against her skin. Her first step was shaky, her second stronger. Each one felt like a storm inside her chest. The distance between her and the ball seemed endless. But she did not stop. Step by step, she crossed the dust. The children's whispers grew louder. Some laughed nervously, others stared in awe. A few even stepped back, as if unsure whether to let her close. But the girl's focus never broke. Her eyes locked on the ball, her jaw set with quiet fire. Finally she reached it, the rough leather sphere resting in the dirt. Her breath came in sharp bursts, her hands shaking. She stared at it as if it were a dream. Daniel's voice reached her again, steady and calm. You've come this far, now touch it. Her foot hovered uncertainly, the metal leg stiff at her side. She bent down, her fingers brushing the ball, lifting it into her arms. Gasps rippled through the circle. The girl clutched the ball to her chest, her eyes wide with disbelief. She had never held it before, never dared. The children who once ignored her now stared, as if the world had shifted beneath their feet. One boy stepped forward, his voice sharp. Give it back, it's not yours. The girl froze, hugging the ball tighter. Her body trembled, fear threatening to crush her. But Daniel's voice cut through the tension, firm and strong. Let her play, he said. The boy flinched at the human soldier's words, stepping back into the circle. The girl's heart pounded, the ball heavy in her arms. She looked at the children, then at Daniel. He nodded once, his eyes steady. You belong here, he told her. Show them. Slowly she lowered the ball to the ground. Her new leg pressed into the dust, her body unsteady. But her spirit burned brighter than ever. She lifted her good foot and tapped the ball forward. It rolled across the ground, slow but sure. The children gasped again. She had not just touched the game. She had begun it. For a moment no one moved. Then one of the younger children, eyes wide with wonder, kicked the ball back toward her. It rolled to her feet, stopping against the steel frame of her leg. The girl's breath caught, her eyes shining. She swung her new leg, awkward and stiff. The ball shot across the square with surprising strength. The children shouted in disbelief, their voices rising into the air. She kicked it, one cried. She can play, another shouted. The circle broke as children rushed closer, their fear melting into excitement. The girl stumbled, nearly falling, but Daniel caught her arm and steadied her. Her lips trembled, then curved into a smile, small but real. For the first time, she was not the watcher. She was part of the game. The ball rolled back again, children urging her forward. Her steps shaky, her kicks clumsy, but her laughter breaking free like sunlight. Daniel watched from the side, his chest tight with pride. Every stumble, every swing, every gasp of joy reminded him why he had built the leg. It was not only steel and wires. It was freedom. The suns dipped lower, painting the square in red and gold light. The game continued, louder than ever. The girl laughed, truly laughed, as the ball flew between her and the other children. Dust rose around them, covering scars and shadows. For those moments, there was no war, no loss, no brokenness. Only play. And though her steps were unsteady, her heart was steady. She had stepped into the circle. She had become part of the world she thought she had lost forever. But in the shadows of the market, unseen eyes watched. Not everyone in the colony was pleased with what the human had done. And as the girl played, danger quietly stirred, waiting for its moment. The square was alive with sound, laughter, and dust. Children who once whispered cruel words now shouted her name, though she had never told it. The alien girl moved clumsily but bravely, her new leg striking the ground with each uneven step. Her body shook, her breath came sharp and fast, but her eyes shone with something stronger than fear. She was not watching anymore. She was playing. Daniel stood at the edge, arms crossed, his face calm but his chest full of quiet pride. Every kick, every stumble, every gasp of joy was proof that his long nights in the scrap yard had not been wasted. He had given her more than metal, he had given her a chance. And that chance was spreading like fire through the other children. One by one, they were no longer laughing at her, they were cheering. The ball rolled far across the square, bouncing against the cracked wall. The children shouted, calling for her to chase it. Her heart raced, her throat dry, but she did not turn away. She limped forward, faster, the straps biting her skin, the joint creaking. Step after step, she closed the distance, until the ball rested at her feet again. She looked down at it, her breath heavy. The circle of children fell quiet, waiting. Daniel's voice carried softly, steady as ever. "Kick it," he said. "Kick it as if it belongs to you." Her hands shook, her chest tightened, but she swung her leg. The ball flew higher than anyone expected, soaring across the square like a comet. Gasps rose from the children, followed by cheers that shook the air. The girl stumbled back, almost falling, but laughter burst from her lips, raw and free. She had kicked it, not weakly, not gently, but with power. For a moment, she could hardly believe it herself. The ball bounced back toward the group, one boy catching it in his arms. Instead of turning away like before, he ran to her, placing the ball in her hands. "Here," he said breathless. "You take the next turn." The girl stared, wide-eyed, clutching the ball against her chest. Her arms trembled, the leather rough under her fingers. She had never held it like this in front of everyone. The children crowded around, waiting. No one told her to leave, no one called her broken. They waited for her, as if she had always belonged. She lifted the ball slowly, her body shaking. Daniel's voice reached her again, quiet but strong. "Throw it, show them who you are." The girl swallowed hard, her eyes meeting the children. For the first time she did not look down, she looked straight at them. Her lips parted, but no words came, only the fire in her eyes spoke for her. She raised the ball and hurled it forward, her good arm straining. It shot through the air, spinning, landing right in the center of the circle. The children erupted into cheers, rushing after it. Dust swirled, laughter echoed, and she was no longer outside the game. She was at its heart. Daniel smiled faintly, but his gaze lifted to the edges of the square. Among the crowd of merchants and workers, he saw faces turned cold, eyes narrowed. Not everyone was happy. Some saw the girl not as a child finding joy, but as a symbol of human interference. Whispers carried like smoke, dangerous and bitter. "She is only walking because of the human," one muttered. "They change our children," another said darkly. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. This moment belonged to her, not to their hate. Back on the field, the girl laughed again, a sound like music breaking through years of silence. The ball rolled to her once more, and this time she did not hesitate. She swung her metal leg, striking hard, sending the ball flying higher than ever. The other children chased it, cheering, their voices lifting her higher than the suns above. Her laughter joined theirs, echoing through the colony walls. She was no longer the watcher, no longer the shadow. She was part of the game. As the suns dipped lower, painting the sky in fire and gold, the children refused to stop. They played until their lungs ached and their feet burned. And the girl never left the circle. Her steps awkward, her kicks uneven, but her spirit untouchable. Every stumble became another cheer, every fall became another laugh. She had become more than she ever dreamed. But in the shadows beyond the square, where the dust met the broken stone, unseen eyes still watched. Not all celebrated her rise. And as night crept closer, the whispers of danger grew louder, waiting for their chance to strike. The stars had begun to shine above the colony walls. The square was still alive with laughter, the sound of children playing carried into the night. The alien girl stood among them, her face glowing with joy, her steps shaky but proud. Dust clung to her skin, sweat on her brow, but she did not care. For the first time, she was not outside the circle. She was inside, part of it. Daniel watched from the edge, arms resting against the fence. His chest heavy but warm, his eyes calm but proud. He had seen soldiers win battles. He had seen cities burn. But nothing compared to the sight of one child standing tall after so long in the shadows. This was not victory written in reports or medals. This was victory written in the heartbeat of a child. The ball rolled to her again, stopping at her feet. The other children froze, waiting. Her eyes widened, her breath catching. Then, with a laugh that rang like music, she swung her metal leg and sent the ball soaring into the air. The children cheered louder than ever, rushing after it. And in that moment, she was no longer the broken girl, no longer the silent watcher. She was a player, equal, free. But not all voices were cheering. At the edge of the market, figures stood watching, their faces dark, their eyes hard. One of them whispered, "The human makes her walk, and the children follow her now. If this spreads, we lose them." Another muttered, "We cannot let this continue." Their words carried the weight of fear, the old fear of humans, the old anger from the war. They turned away into the shadows, their whispers promising trouble. Daniel's sharp eyes caught the movement. He knew resistance was coming. But he did not move, not tonight. Tonight belonged to her, and he would not let fear steal it away. The girl stumbled once, nearly falling, but a child caught her hand, pulling her back into balance. Her eyes widened in surprise, then softened into gratitude. That small gesture was more powerful than any words. Once she had been alone, now she had friends. Once she had only silence, now she had laughter. She raised her face to the stars, her heart beating with a new rhythm. Daniel stepped closer, his voice low so only she could hear. "You did it," he said. The girl turned her face to him, her eyes wet with tears she did not hide this time. Her lips curved into a trembling smile. She could not speak, not yet, but her eyes spoke enough. They said thank you. They said hope. They said freedom. Daniel placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "Remember this," he whispered. "No one can take this from you. Not ever." The girl nodded, holding the words like treasure. The game went on until the night grew deep, until the stars filled the sky. The children's voices slowly faded. One by one they returned to their homes. But the girl stayed in the square, sitting with the ball in her lap. Daniel sat nearby, silent but steady. The colony was quiet, the dangers in the shadows waiting. But between them, a bond stronger than fear had been forged. Tomorrow there would be whispers, resistance, perhaps even threats. But tonight there was only victory. The girl had stood, she had walked, she had played. And nothing could erase that. As the moons rose high, Daniel lifted his eyes to the stars. He thought of Earth, of his sister, of every child who ever needed a chance. And he thought of this girl, who had taken one step and changed an entire world. Because sometimes, he realized, humanity's greatest weapon was not fire, not steel, not war. It was kindness. The girl leaned against the wall, her eyes closing, the ball still clutched tight in her arms. Her face was peaceful, her body tired, but her spirit strong. Tomorrow she would play again, tomorrow she would stand again. And every tomorrow after, she would never be only the watcher. She would be part of the game. Daniel stood, his shadow long under the twin moons. He looked at her one last time before turning toward the barracks. A faint smile touched his lips. He had given her a leg, but she had given him something greater. She had reminded him why humanity fought, why they endured, why they cared. And as he walked into the night, the sound of her laughter still echoed in his heart. A sound brighter than any star. A sound that promised a new beginning.